Hello, my name is Parker,
And my name is Ned.
and this is the Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. This is episode number 24. We are recording on November 3rd, towards the tail end of pre-release weekend. I have been loving pre-releases. Ned, how was your pre-release?
That's a low slight because I was not able to make one. I have been doing my civic duty, been on a 10-day jury trial, and so my schedule's been all goofed up, and that cascades onto my partner, and therefore it felt a little selfish to ask for the time to take the time to come out.
It's not like we were busy with Star Wars Unlimited the previous weekend with our planet all day with our planetary qualifier. But I
Boy.
mean, Ned, courtrooms don't have to be emotionally draining. Just get good, right? Years
Yeah.
and years in there, and then you can just watch as somebody's life is flushed down the toilet, and then go home and just turn on Netflix. It's fine.
I can't do that yet, Parker. I'm not quite as jaded.
Yeah, no, there's a reason why there are so many jokes at our expense. Um, and speaking of the horrors of the modern world, in addition to uh, the American legal system. Also, it's daylight savings time. So, our condolences to all the parents out there. I hope you're surviving. Uh, if you have a late morning kid, you had the easy one.
Yep.
If you have an early morning kid, you have this is the hard one. But I think all parents are a little thrown off. So, our condolences. How was your PQ, Ned? How was your
It
planetary qualifier?
it started off pretty well. I got to table one and I played non-camera match against somebody with Luke Yellow, which was a really interesting bring. But
There's a
uh,
lot of Luke Yellow there.
yeah,
I
it
think there were
seems like
two, which is still feels like a lot.
yeah, and that was not a deck that I had prepared for, and so I had a bad time against it. But in the later rounds, like I was playing against decks that I had prepared for, and I was just doing poorly because 6 rounds is a lot of rounds. And so at round 6, when I was 3-3, I dropped, and I was bringing GI Blue in case it wasn't obvious that I'm going to bring the Crunchwrap Supreme of decks, as it was so
I
accurately described.
what I love that description, and I'm going to keep running with it. I was so optimistic for you to hold up our end.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to. 8 days before our PQ, we got the preview of Chancellor Palpatine, and that took a lot of time. 60 more preview cards the following Tuesday. That took a lot of time. I hadn't played Star Wars Unlimited in 3 weeks prior to the PQ, being despite thinking about Star Wars Unlimited all day, every day, leading up. But in the state of despair that Ned and I are in due to exhaustion and jury trials, Ned and I have decided to bring a moment of optimism to our dark lives by renewing our vows, the vows that we made in a bit 4 months ago, so that we could do our favorite segment. I think the thrice a year that we dip into speculation and hype as opposed to the cold hard math. We are going to discuss something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. Ned, why don't you kick us off? What for those who haven't been sticking with us for 4 months, something old, Ned, what is a pre-Twilight of the Republic leader that you are excited to see reinvigorated by new cards?
So I'm not claiming this is going to be good, but I am claiming that it has a
This
chance.
is hype.
This
This
is
is not.
hype. This okay. I'm so hyped for IG88 green. Like you finally got a lot of token units. You've got a lot of stuff that makes a lot of bodies. Poggle the Lesser is gonna just like crank out your battle droids. Battle droid escort is gonna crank out the battle droids. You get to play overwhelming barrage. You get to like Kraken. Depending on what base you run, I'm running the new green rare base to just try and get more poopers on the board for my flip turn. I know that's we're venturing into extremely bold move territories, but you could also just like run ECL and Steadfast Battalion and do normal tricks. And yeah,
Normal tricks
no,
are fun.
yeah, you've still got IG-88, which is maybe not well statted in an environment where Boba Fett, the 4/7 leader that drops on 4, especially who plays a lot of his armor, is extremely popular. But if you're not running,
Raid, I mean, +1, +0. I don't know. Do you feel that's enough in the face of Anakin?
um, well, so the idea is that against Anakin, so Anakin is obviously going to be
Not versus Anakin. I
right,
just
right. No,
mean
no, no.
compared to Anakin.
Compared to Anakin, Anakin is going to be a little bit faster, but Anakin is also kind of burning the candle at both ends. So yes, you are dealing more damage, but when you're playing villainy green, you have access to a little bit of a top end and staying power, and having the ability to like Vader, um, or if you tweak your deck that way, seems not bad. So you're running like the kind of tempo-y, aggressive but not hyper aggressive shading into mid-range decks that I seem to gravitate towards, like a nacho cheese sauce in a flour tortilla.
Let's yeah, no, I'm looking forward to when we were up at PAX West. I got a commitment out of Ned, set 7, nothing but meta. It's going to be all meta all the time.
I will be
The
there for it. I am committing live on air in front of God and all our listeners that at some point I will stop like shopping at the Taco Bell of decks, but that
yeah,
day is not today.
no jank, but that day is not. We're at least a year out from that moment. Um I am more optimistic about my choice. I'm excited about Ray Red.
Mm,
I think Ray Red, she was in that window of hope that happens in a set where she's on early meta lists. She has high presence at a lot of like early showdowns, and she wasn't there, but she was close, right? Like she's I think a solid B plus tier leader, which is not enough to make the competitive circuit a lot, but she's good, and I think she
mhm.
got a lot of new tools that I'm excited about, both uh, in blue and in red. Most excited about Soldier of the 501st. That card, that's the 1/3 with raid 1 for 1. That I think in raid that's a 2/4 with raid 1 on your opening turn.
Oh yeah,
That
that's some
like
juice. Yeah,
3/4 for 2 on attack. Just is
it
good.
trades into uh the
Everything
everything.
favorably.
Right. Yeah. Uh Marine, Battlefield Marine, it trades into Han 2 putting out Cassian Andor. Like being able to trade into a 3/3 well is a really good place to be in for an aggressively slanted deck.
She's got Stila Guerrera, which I'm kind of high on in Ray Blue, just because when you're running any kind of red blue deck, I don't know how much value Stila offers. She's the one who she's the 4/4/5, or sorry, 4/4/3, who deal when you play and when defeated, deal 2 damage to your base, tutor for a tactic. Outside of, I mean, basically all of your answers in blue are tactics.
Hmm.
Takedown and Fell the Dragon and Rivals Fall, and the best, my favorite red card, Pillage. All of those are tactics. And so in a red blue Heroism shell, you just, or any, you've got, she will reliably grab you, just draw 2. I am curious to see Ned, how the Ned math will accommodate the value of draw from 8 when also dealing 2 damage to base.
That's going to be an interesting one to code. I feel like two
There's a
damage.
lot of interesting ones to code in this
Yeah.
set, I think. Um,
I will say that also the fact that the two damage is optional is quite good.
yeah, that you
Yeah.
can just play her. I mean, she's
Yeah.
just a 4th. If you've got the one on the draw,
Yeah.
you don't need to grab another one on the defeat, or vice versa.
Right.
If you know. Um,
You probably want
and
to
then
because
also I'm
to
looking at Senatorial Corvette just because I'm increasingly enjoying red heroism as the make your opponent discard color. I'm increasingly drawn to red heroism because Ned likes to have answers, and so I like Ned not to have answers. It's satisfying. I genuinely feel one of the more satisfying feelings is getting a control player into top deck.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it feels good. It feels good. I don't know if it's going to push Ray Red into the truly competitive, but I think she'll be at least a fantastic deck to take to locals and just enjoy some non A plus tier deck.
I would also say that the Saboteur on the Senatorial Corvette, there are a fair few Sentinel space units that are used to kind of hold the ground, and a fair few shielded space units that I can think of that being able to kill on attack seems good.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
4 hit points. I mean, 5-4. You're hoping for a little bit more, but if they
yeah,
race it down, then they're just eating their own discard.
yeah.
So you're okay with them spending a lot of resources to get rid of it. I suspect that Senatorial Corvette will see more play in something like an Anakin Shell, but I'm excited for it in Ray Red. Ned, what is a new deck, or sorry, a new leader to Twilight of the Republic that you are excited to try out?
So I mean, as soon as the card was spoiled, everybody was talking about Palp.
Chancellor
Chancellor
Palp.
Palpatine. It's such a interesting feature where not only do you have a leader that effectively has no deploy side, but also you get to play with both moralities. You get to play with both moralities in kind of like a constrained, weird way, but you also have a lot of control over it's you're constantly making these decisions of evaluating value, like trying to optimize your flip value versus trying to optimize your turn value, trying to look ahead. I think that this is going to be a deck that's going to be miserable to pilot in paper, because there's going to be a lot, especially if you're the opponent, um, because I can see a lot of people just hemming and hawing over exactly how to line up their turns, because you can't just think about this turn, you have to think about the next turns. I think the key cards, kind of, if you're going to be playing Palp, I really like pairing Palp with blue for Super Laser Blast, because Super Laser Blasting on 8 and then being able to deal 2 damage and immediately get a Clone Trooper to put something on the board feels really good. Um, as far as enabling Palp, Triple Dark Raid, it's a really good card, but it hasn't had like a proper home. You see it in the Tarkin Yellow decks that were really popular.
I think Tarkin Yellow is its proper home. It just wasn't good.
Fair.
Like Tarkin Yellow was good, but I mean that was run a bunch of vehicles. The deck.
Yeah, but I think that the real kind of juice cards that I'm expecting to see a lot of are Super Laser Blast, for obvious reasons. Clearing the board and dealing 2 damage to your opponent's base and leaving yourself with a unit. Seems pretty good in like a controlling style deck. And then the one that I'm kind of proud of for finding, and I think is quite good, is Phase 2 Clone Trooper, where it's a 3/2 heroism unit with ambush for 3. So I think that, I really wish that it was slightly worse statted and 2 and ambush, but 3 is still pretty good. You get to ambush it in on 3 to enable your flips, because that's one of the biggest things, is trying to find ways to enable your flips when your opponent interferes with your uh, attempts to be slightly more optimal. Another card that I think is good, although it could be better, is Sneak Attack, just so that you can get those heroism units in at like a slight discount, even if you're having to. And then if you're overpaying, it works out to less of an overpay, but they're coming in ready, so you're able to immediately like slam them into something, which I think is important for you to get your flips, because that's going to happen. Yeah.
Um, fair. Okay. Something new that I'm excited about, Ned,
Yes.
is Watt Tambor.
Okay.
Which I feel like is going to be basically the similar deck that you're running with IG88, but better.
I believe it.
Uh,
Can you tell
I'm
me
gonna
about Wat
I'm,
Tambor? Because like that leader for some reason just passed through my consciousness without me ever.
when you lose a unit, tap them. Exhaust them as an action.
Yeah.
Give another unit +2/+2 for the face. And
Okay.
I think I'm going to take a spicy take. I think it's being slept on, and I think Wat Tambor is the best Twilight Green leader in Premiere. The All the hotness is around Dooku,
Mhm.
but it's going to just go like Jabba. Like it's a cool leader with this simulated ramp, but Dooku is so focused on Separatist. Like you can only build with Separatist. It's great. I mean, he's great if you've got a decent Separatist setup and a decent droid setup in limited.
Mhm.
He's absolute beast. But I just don't. I don't think he's. I think a little bit of ramp by giving something exploit one, some suboptimal subset of green villainy. Of your cards, of the card pool exploit one. I don't think Dooku's it. Padme, I think most people agree, is not it.
No.
People are trying to make Rex work, and I think two for a 2/2 would be pretty viable, I think, but the additional attack requirement to get it in there is just
Mm,
it doesn't allow you to come back. It doesn't allow you to
yeah.
set up. Rex is a beloved character. I don't think he's going to get there, but you look at something like Anakin, who get the +2/+0 seems hype,
Yeah.
seems viable. Anakin, obviously beloved character. Wat Tambor, a little bit less so. But +2/+2, I think the condition's pretty easy to meet.
Yeah.
If you're playing Green Villainy, you're going to be losing units. And then +2/+2 just gives you a lot of reach. Like
Mhm.
you can trade up pretty reliably. Green has a non-trivial number of sentinels. The +2 health often doesn't matter because the unit just dies at the end of the round, at the end of the phase. But it can allow if your opponent knows you're going to try to trade into something, you can say no, thank you. Uh, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think Wat Tambor. I don't know if he's good, but I think he's going to end up being the best premier green leader in Twilight.
No,
Um,
looking at him, he looks like he's got some juice.
I
Yeah.
think he's rock solid. He is a solid green mid range good stuff deck. I think he is a lower skill floor Palp in that you also want good sack units,
Mhm.
but rather than just so you can get those deaths, you want lots of nice green when defeated, but rather than play this high skill Palp, you control game, you just have a nice mid range. A couple key cards. Poggle the Lesser. Everybody knows Poggle shapes up to be quite good. Uh, just leaving this 1/4 turn one in play that generates free droid tokens forever demands an answer, and those droid tokens die, triggering Watt.
Yeah.
Um, Card I'm excited about. Vanguard Infantry might be his time to
Oh
shine.
man, Vanguard
Um,
infantry.
he's not good, but he's better, right? Like that
Mhm.
+2, giving somebody else a +3/+3 is when he dies is a huge swing. A combination of Droid Commando, the 4/3 for 3, who has Separatist conditional ambush, and then the Coruscant Guard, the 3/2 for 2, who has the coordinate ambush. Both those ambushes, nice, aggressively statted ambushes that immediately then allow you to give something else +2/+2 off of Watt. The card that I think is really going to push Watt is the green villainy staple, Overwhelming
Oh
Barrage,
boy.
because a lot of times turn 2 you're dropping something with 3, turn 4 you're dropping something with 4, you're going into resource 5,
Mhm.
and your opponent's staring down a 3/3 and a 4/4. A lot of times the like kind of smart play, if you're expecting Overwhelming Barrage, is take out the big beef, trade something into the bigger unit. If you trade something into the bigger unit, something that you played on resource 4, Watt just gives +2/+2 to something that you played on resource 3,
Yeah.
and so now you're sitting there with something like a fifth brother who gets +2/+2, and then you give them the overwhelming barrage. So you got some unit that's rolling out with +4/+4. I think that's just like and that's not magical Christmas land. That is literally, did you play something beefy on turn 2 and turn 3 on curve? And if so, you're probably in a good shape for a really nice overwhelming barrage.
Hmm.
So I don't know if Watt's going to be amazing, but I'm really excited to take him to locals, just because I think just continuously being, I mean, trading units is what you want to do in a green mid range deck. And then you're just giving lots of +2/+2 reach just all day, every day. So now we're going to do something borrowed, which is where we not, I mean, Ned and I are both kind of filthy net deckers, me way more than Ned. But this is where we acknowledge our theft. So, Ned, what deck did somebody else craft that you are excited about?
I am once again drawing from the Well of Thork, the known Oregon coast staple, Thor's Well. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. He has
What are you drawing from Thork?
An Anakin yellow build that I thought was juicy. I mean, R2.
Oh, hey, I just said Anakin had people excited.
Yeah.
What do you know?
So R2D2 full of solutions is just an amazing card, right? Like any deck is really happy to play 2/4 is really good stats, and then being able to fix your hand is very good. Like it's not even like if it was just discard and draw, that would be one thing, but it's discard and draw one of three, right? Like that's in a really amazing way to fix your draws on an aggressively statted unit. You've got the Anakin leader, who is really good in an aggressively slated deck. Favorable Delegate is a unit that I think is really interesting. It's a 2 cost 1/5 for 2 in yellow. It has when played, draw a card. When defeated, discard a card from your hand. That when played, draw a card on a 1/5 statted thing is quite good. um, 1/5 is standard R2 stats, and I think that it's a fine stat line. It's not amazing, but particularly in Anakin, where you're able to beef it up so that it can trade into something, I think that becomes quite good. And then it also runs Now There Are Two of Them, and I think that when a lot of people saw Now There Are Two of Them, it's a card that plays into a typal deck, but it's not like a standard typal, right? Because you need exactly one other unit. But I think that Anakin being aggressive, you're going to frequently end up in situations where you have one unit on the board, and you can easily cascade into Now There Are Two of Them. Particularly because in this deck you have a lot of cross synergies. I think one of the good ones is Jesse.
What traits are you thinking your Anakin Yell's running?
It's Force and Republic are the two big ones. So you've got a big chunk of Force and you've got a big chunk of Republic. The one exception here is K2SO, which is Rebel Droid. You do
But you're going to run K2SO in Red Heroism,
basically,
pretty
yeah. I
much.
mean, like that's the long and the
He's
short.
a
Yeah,
staple.
that's just the way of it. But um, I think it will be interesting. I'm not sure that the build that I've linked is going to be the final build. I think that like Plo Koon, for
I
example,
think that's true for
most of these.
every deck that's been designed so far.
Yeah. Plo Koon, for example, and Anakin Skywalker both kind of want you to go a little bit wider than I think that this deck is going to end up being, although maybe I'd be surprised. And then having Mace at the top end, I think that that's a little like, yes, again, if you can hit Now There Are Two of Them into Mace, I think you're in a really good situation. But I'll be interested to see how often that happens.
Speaking of red Force users, I am from Star Wars Dad, not you, Ned, not me, but from Star Wars Dad on YouTube, borrowing Maul Green. Um, let's talk about the match we just played. We've put
Yes.
that off. I didn't want to bring that up until we had discussed the two decks that we had played. Spoiler alert: I played Maul
And I
Green,
played Palp
and Ned,
Blue.
you, I think it's pretty
Yeah.
obvious, played Chancellor
Oh
Palp.
yes.
Uh, tell us about the best 2 out of 3.
It was really interesting, playing
Yes.
playing so game 1, I think that neither of us have really played the deck against another human being before, and so there was a lot of kind of like awkward bumping into each other in ways that we didn't expect. I think it kind of,
This is,
yeah.
an episode about a wedding, Ned. So, that makes sense.
um, but I think that I was able to kind of.
How did we do?
I went 2-1, but the game that you won was incredibly strong, and even the first game that you lost, you were throwing like what was it, like 14, 18 damage on my base on turn 5.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel it's a purely refinement, and I don't want to blame luck.
yeah,
I mean, even though that will happen. Deck one was my game, and then I just ran out of
yeah.
gas. Deck two, I did not run out of gas. Next, and then deck three or game three, I didn't draw a single ramp. Um, so the reason why I'm excited about Maul Green is because I just think he is the deck that Vader Green wishes it was.
Mm,
I think everybody played Vader Green, and Vader Green has legs,
yeah,
but the versions of Vader that really end up taking the meta were Vader Blue, and I think Vader has a slight predisposition to control.
well,
That
yeah,
that the ping
yeah.
the ping damage is your way of just saying no until you play your big good stuff.
Hmm.
And I think Maul says, why are we waiting to play our big good stuff? What if all of our big good stuff, though, if that was just the deck? I
Yeah,
think Maul is the most good stuff dot deck I have seen yet. I don't it was a little unrefined. No offense to Star Wars Dad. I definitely felt like there were a couple times that I was drawing a card that I didn't necessarily want. Snowtrooper Lieutenant, for example,
mm,
never. There are just too many non-imperial units, and it was great to pull off a Vader, and even if I ran the non-imperial into base as well without the +2/+0, but you don't want it in your opening
no,
hand. So I felt like I had a pretty rough turn one,
yeah,
but I played Maul last night and at pre-release, and just the it really powerfully rewards you from the default state of play,
yeah.
because the default state of play is just take dudes and smash them into other dudes. That's what the game wants you to do. More so than Magic, more so than I think a lot of dude smashers. This game kind of feels a little bit like, Star Wars Unlimited. I think has a bit more of chess vibe, where
Hmm.
we know what units are going to be smashing into other units, but it's about the optimal timing,
Hmm.
right? It's about, okay, you're going to do this, so I'm going to do this, so and you go back and forth. But yes, there are control decks. Yes, there are shenanigans. Yes, there are, triple dark raid or ambush or whatever that plays from hand.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's about taking dudes, smashing them into other dudes. That is the like core default. And we've seen that Invader chip damage can, especially chip damage to base, can add up.
Hmm.
And I think Maul just says, hey, take your dude, run him into your opponent's dude, and often pick up 1 or 2 damage on top of that.
Yeah.
That there's never any wasted damage. If the damage isn't going to the unit, it's going to the base, and that just adds up. And red green specifically. So I think Maul. I've seen some good blue builds. Somebody will inevitably make a red or yellow build. I haven't seen much of those, but I think the red green villainy base is just all the beef. I don't think this deck actually has any key cards, and that may be naive. I think all the cards are good. You're pretty much just hoping to draw whatever is on curve. I don't think you're ever tutoring. I don't think you're ever hoping. You're just saying, I hope that I get cheap cards early and expensive cards later, and they're all good. Some of the ones that I think though that kind of shine into the kind of traditional Vader Green base out of Twilight, Confederate
Oh
Tri-Fighter.
yeah.
I mean, that did work against Chancellor Palp, but that's just
I think in
luck
general
of the matchup,
there's just enough incidental healing that it's good, and then it's also a 3/3 for 3 in space. That's,
which is
yeah,
good. That's just fine. And
yeah.
you weren't planning on healing yourself in Red Villainy anyway. So, uh, new Count Dooku, absolute, and I think replaces Palp.
Mm.
set one Palp.
Yeah, it
You get
comes
two
down.
targets.
Yeah, it comes down earlier.
He's still an overwhelm
Hmm.
who can deal damage. You don't get to do part and parcel, but you can actually do a lot more than 6, right?
Hmm.
Like Palp gives you very targeted. You can spread it around like an overwhelming barrage, whereas Count Dooku limits you to 2 targets, but you can sack, you know, some big stuff. Like I was prepared. I did not get to, but like a Ruthless Raider,
Oh
like
boy,
sacrificing 2 Ruthless Raiders off of Dooku,
that's some
you know,
juice. Yeah.
like you have to be in a, I don't know if that's optimal, right? But in theory, then that is 12 damage, 6 damage to 2 different units plus 4 damage to base, and then you're just left with the 6/6 overwhelm for the cost of 4.
Hmm.
Like, and then all game I was hoping to ECL in Darth Maul, but you never had two.
Why would I
Like
have two
you were
units on
not.
the board at a time?
Yeah, it was just like absolutely killing me.
Yeah.
Two of the games I had Darth Maul, but so I think those are, and again, uh you can't mix ECL and Maul leader's ability, but there was definitely a window where I had leader Maul out, and if you have leader Maul out, a lot of these options become great with ECL because then you don't have to spend the action. So all of that ambush becomes Vader. I did pull that off of ambushing Vader in and getting the overwhelm. Like it's all just ramp into like the best of the best for ground beef. Um, and I don't know if it's going to be great, but again, I think this is the I want probably the non-blue deck I'm most excited about. Is it's just good stuff. Deck. Which Ned believes every game deserves to have.
I mean, you deserve to have it, but you ought not to like it. It's
Speaking of something blue, Ned.
also,
Uh,
speaking of Vader, let's imagine if you will, Parker, that you could
yes.
play a leader who had an ability like Vader, except instead of it being throwing useless damage to the base, like in a control deck, why do I care about damage of my opponent's base? I could throw it on more on their units to better be able to kill them. Uh, I could deploy and destroy a large number, maybe sweep um, a fair few units, and I'm in heroism, so I get access to all the like really good heroism blue and red top end cards that show up in so many decks, and I
I love red blue heroism.
yeah.
It is a fantastic color. Tell me more, Ned.
Well, have you considered Mace Windu? So
I have,
yeah.
but tell me about it.
Mace Windu Blue, I think, is a deck that might go there. So
Is this your list,
this is
Ned?
my list. Yeah, this is my list. I really leveraged Queel, if I'm saying that name right, where you've got a large number of blue units, and so being able to uh, get some additional like little chump card advantage on a perfectly reasonably statted unit is good. There's a fair few events that just do incidental damage, and that's going to be the key thing about Mace is that in order to really be able to be good, you need to be dealing incidental damage to units. But I think that there's enough of those with, Daring Raid is not incidental damage, but it's cheap enough that you can, Daring Raid into Mace to kill something with 4 health for 2 resources. So, like a cheaper version of, although slower version of open fire. Grenade strike and blood sport both throw damage there. You might want to throw a bombing run in there if space gets to be big, but there's a lot of what's going on because you're playing heroism blue. You get to play hello there. It doesn't directly tie into Mace, but it's also just a really good card that shuts down a huge number of strategies. Um, and then at the top end, you get to play Luke, you get to play Mace Windu, you get to unit, you get to play Chewbacca Pikesbane to clean up, and then just deploying Mace to deal 2 damage to each damaged enemy unit on 7 for a reasonably statted card is it's a good deal. Um, I think that you could
Yeah.
get some good stuff. Oh, last card I'm gonna talk to is Heavy Staunch Martyr. I know that the name pains you slightly. I'm aware that I saw the exchange in which it was confirmed that it is canon, but being able to deal 1 damage to each enemy ground unit as a 4/4 for 4, when defeated, dealing 1 damage to each enemy ground unit, I think is going to be real juice in Mr. Windu.
No, heavy surprisingly maps to Windu incredibly well.
Yeah.
Of just okay, great. Now I can just ping. My worry is that, and maybe this is my naivete, is that Mace feels like a slow Anakin.
Mm,
In that Anakin is, here's your opportunity to trade up,
right.
right? And Mace Windu allows you to trade up by you run 3 power into something with 4 HP, and then ping.
Yep.
You run something with 4 power into something with 5 HP, and then you ping. But it just feels like that slowness means they get to do something with it on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And that being said, I'm incredibly excited and optimistic about some heroism control. Like
Yeah.
that has been sorely missing. Um, there's no reason why letting people not have fun has to be an inherently bad thing, a villainous
No,
thing.
no.
You can be a hero who doesn't let anybody have fun.
And you should.
Um, I for my something blue, I'm excited to try out Nalase. And I know people are down on Nalase, but or at least I haven't seen it in a number of discords and the subreddits a lot of cooking. But as far as I'm concerned, Nalase's ability functionally says villainy can use tech. Like the rest of it is immaterial. I mean, there's a lot of fun other stuff, but at this point, you're hard pressed to find a non-Sabine heroism deck that doesn't run at least one tech. Like
Yeah.
the ability to bring back all of your resources as answers to specific questions is an incredibly powerful tool. And I feel like the card that did not need help getting access to its powerful tools was Blue Villainy. And yet, here comes Nalase. Like tech, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's interesting. That could be useful." And yet at this point, it's tech is pretty much standard issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like tech is like, are you running, green heroism? You're almost certainly running, Sabine or Green Squadron A-wing, right? Like there's these just like staple cards that you're not always running, but you're often running because they're just very aggressively statted
Yeah.
or very useful, right? If you're running Green Villainy, you're running Overwhelming Barrage. Like, show me a deck that's not. If you're running in heroism and you're planning on getting past turns, resource 6, you're running tech.
Mm-hmm.
And giving tech to the, yeah, safely resource your super laser blast and only use it when you need it, right? Um, oh, sure, like bring out an Avenger, like, just the ability to take all of that awful blue top end, Snoke, right?
Oh
And
man.
just like bringing out as needed off of tech. You feel very comfortable and very safe. Just resourcing it early just helps the blue villainy curve. Um, and then you get all the other great clones, right? Like there's a wide variety. Your own, like you said, heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if you're running red, you get to run heavy. Wrecker, right?
Oh,
Who doesn't want to run Wrecker? And then putting Wrecker in a blue villainy shell, like, yeah, sure. 5 damage. If you're in blue villainy, you're planning on getting a million resources
oh
anyway.
yeah.
So who cares about a resource? And a card that and again, exclusively limited, but new Echo
Mm.
2. I mean, Coordinate, I think we'll see. We'll see where it is in competitive play, but I think Coordinate is easier to hit than a lot of people expect. I think a lot of people are picturing games with only 1 or 2 units, and yes, it can be turned off. But Echo, I mean, late game, you're in a blue deck. You're often just rounding out a curve. I don't know that Nalase like a blue villainy deck doesn't traditionally want to run enough units that you're going to reliably be able to trigger coordinate. So there's a bit of like a nombo there, but
Mm.
I really like Echo. There's just a lot of good clones. I can only imagine we'll get a few more. We've gotten some in every set, unlike say Separatist or something. We've constantly seen clones. Um, yeah, Blue Villainy and Tech is something I'm very excited and interesting to try out. So, uh, I have a question for you about Chancellor Palp.
Yes.
Uh, so that's you've now built for it.
Yeah.
How much it was fascinating to me how it makes sense intellectually, but how potent and powerful because there's no unit
Yeah.
side, the leader sides have to be so much
Oh,
better to
yes.
make up for the non-stop. And it's just I'm sitting over here being like, oh yeah, I can attack with an overwhelm, and you're just every turn being like, yeah, heal 2 and draw,
Yeah.
like, for free. Like, it was. But how much do you, when building, are you planning your curve around uh the bouncing back and
I
forth
think you
versus
100% have to, but you also have to have some redundancies. So, like, you really want to know when you're doing your first flip. Ideally, you're doing your first flip on your 2 resource turn or your 3 resource turn. If it's taking you longer than that, I think that you're going to be falling far behind and you're not getting the value that you need. But I think that planning on flipping them on the 3 resource turn is important, and so that means that you need to figure out what you're doing on the 2 resource turn so that you're lined up for your 3 resource turn to be able to flip. But then if you're flipping on the 3 resource turn, then you don't want to play any villainy threes, right? Like if you're, or the villainy threes that you're going to play are going to be more constrained, and you'll need to like mix them in with some villainy ones. And thankfully, like flipping back to the heroism side is a lot easier, where like it normally doesn't take a lot of shenanigans to, because it's just a play. Um, but being able to flip from the heroism side to the villainy side is something you really need to take into account. And ideally, you want to be doing that as much as possible. But also, if you're doing that as much as possible, that requires that you're shaping things. So, like when I built Palp, I was hyper focused on how can I make sure that I'm flipping on my 2 or my 3 resource turn. And the only ways that I could think of that are, um, you've got to have either an ambush unit that with a relatively low health that's heroism, or you have to be able to do something else. So, examples of this are,
I'm surprised you went with blue. I mean, it gets
yeah.
you things like Power of the Dark Side and Avenger, but I was thinking green gets you like a lot of green heroism,
Mm-hmm.
but it also gets you overwhelming barrage and super laser tech. And I mean, in terms of ramp, I played against you running a lot of, Emperor Palp ramp,
Yeah.
Chancellor Palp getting both spark ramp and also super laser tech ramp. Like, I mean, you're, you know, losing units.
I mean, the problem is super laser tech suddenly becomes really awkward, right? Like super laser tech, you really want to play on your 3 resource turn, but unless you can guarantee that you're flipping on your 2 resource turn, you're not going to have super laser tech that you're playing on your 3 resource turn. You're playing it out then on your 4 resource turn. And if you're playing super laser tech on your 4 resource turn, that doesn't feel great, right?
Well, you can play it on your 3 resource turn. You just play anything on your first turn that dies.
That dies is the key thing. If you'll remember the one game that I had like a really hard time with,
Is when I didn't play
you
anything
didn't
for
play
like three
anything, right?
turns.
I had R2D2 sitting there like bumping you for 2, right? And I think, okay, the other challenge is lining it up. So like let's say that I play my unit on 2, my 2 resource on my 2 resource turn I play like a unit, and then you um play, I don't know, do something like play a 1, and then I take initiative, and then you daring raid and kill my unit, right? Now I'm moving into my 3 resource turn. I've got nothing on board, so I'm not going to be able to flip. And so you get into these situations, you need to be really careful about and making sure that you're able to have units that stick or that are coming in from hand. And that's why I put a lot of value on like Millennium Falcon. I thought was a really good way to, because it's coming in ready, um, and you can choose whether or not you want to bounce it back. Also, there's a fair few smuggle heroism cards. The second Millennium Falcon Lando's Pride smuggles in Zora Bliss. I think I'm getting their name right. Zori Bliss. Um, has unfortunately kind of a big butt, but smuggles in, and frequently you're going to need like something to put down on like awkward resource turns. Ahsoka, I was really hoping, but it's really hard to enable. Like I
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I don't think Ahsoka is quite like Ahsoka seems like I mean,
yeah,
a lot of good value, but there's so many conditions attached. I just wanted to ask that,
yeah.
Ned, because I had a note that we didn't quite get to while talking about the Chancellor Palp deck of make sure you explained it in such a way as to make it clear why I have no interest in playing it. I have I have no interest in pursuing that level of lines. I think he's such a high skill ceiling.
Yeah,
But I can't Icarus my way through that. I think that's all she wrote.
beautiful.
This is episode 24, The Force Unlimited. We're recording on November 3rd. Dear listener, if you have any thoughts about the episode, please email us at theforceunlimited@gmail.com. Ned, do you have any final thoughts?
I do, and that is the new pulp might actually be greasy enough to lure me away from the Grand Inquisitor, but we'll see how it goes.
I think there's so much finagling you can do. Plays interestingly in all the colors because you get double card pool. I'm excited.
Yeah.
You should pursue it. I think you have the potential to be high skill ceiling. Okay. With that, dear listener, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Adios.